These are the most unhinged guests who ever appeared on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. Celebrities who ignored every rule of television decorum and pushed America's most beloved host to his absolute breaking point. For 30 years, Johnny Carson maintained perfect control over his late-night kingdom. He was the master of timing, the king of cool, the man who could make or break careers with a single raised eyebrow. But even Carson met his match when certain guests arrived with their own chaotic agendas, transforming his carefully orchestrated show into must-see television for all the wrong reasons. In an era before publicists micromanaged every celebrity appearance, these wild encounters created the kind of raw television magic that would be impossible today. From drunken tirades to physical altercations, from shocking sexual comments to dramatic walkouts, these guests didn't just push boundaries, they obliterated them entirely. What made these moments so compelling wasn't just the chaos itself, but watching Carson navigate each crisis in real time. His legendary composure would crack just enough to reveal the human being behind the professional facade, creating television gold in the process. Here are the most unforgettable moments when Johnny Carson earned every penny of his legendary salary. Arnold Schwarzenegger arrived on The Tonight Show in 1979 as a brash young bodybuilder promoting the documentary Pumping Iron. Long before he became the Terminator or Governor of California, Arnold was just an Austrian muscle-bound dreamer with Olympic-sized confidence and virtually no understanding of American television standards. Carson, always comfortable interviewing athletes, began with standard questions about training and competition. But when Johnny innocently asked Schwarzenegger to describe the pump, the blood flow to muscles during intense workouts, Arnold's response created what might be the most uncomfortable moment in Tonight Show history. "The pump is like having sex with a woman and coming," Schwarzenegger declared with absolute conviction, his thick accent making the words even more jarring. But he didn't stop there. He continued with graphic details comparing muscle engorgement to orgasm, using terminology that was absolutely forbidden on 1970s network television. "I am coming day and night. It's terrific," he exclaimed as Carson's expression transformed from polite interest to genuine horror. The audience reaction was immediate. A shocked silence fell over the studio. In an era when married couples were still shown sleeping in separate beds on television dramas, this level of sexual explicitness was completely unprecedented. Carson, the master of sly innuendo and double entendre, looked genuinely thrown. "Well, I certainly wouldn't know about that," Carson finally replied, tugging nervously at his tie, a gesture longtime viewers recognized as his signal of extreme discomfort. What made the moment particularly jarring was Schwarzenegger's complete obliviousness to the social norms he had just shattered. While Carson attempted to steer the conversation back to safer territory, Arnold continued describing his physique in aggressively sexualized terms, seemingly unaware that he had crossed a line even the relatively permissive Tonight Show wouldn't tolerate. Behind the scenes, producers were frantically signaling Carson to wrap up the segment. The control booth was in total panic mode. Network executives were calling, demanding to know what was happening on their family-friendly program. Carson, ever the professional, managed to redirect the conversation toward Schwarzenegger's competitive achievements, but the damage was done. When the segment finally ended, Carson reportedly turned to Ed McMahon during the commercial break and said, "I think we just got pumped in a way the FCC isn't going to appreciate." What's remarkable is that this incident didn't derail Schwarzenegger's career. In fact, some argue his unfiltered confidence, however inappropriate for the venue, demonstrated the charismatic force of personality that would eventually make him a box office titan. Carson never publicly referenced the incident afterward, but Schwarzenegger wasn't invited back for several years. When he eventually returned in the mid-1980s as a rising Hollywood star, he was noticeably more media-trained, though no less confident. And Johnny, with the weariness of a man who'd been burned before, steered very clear of any questions about pumping. Burt Reynolds was normally one of Carson's favorite guests, charming, quick-witted, and full of great Hollywood stories. But when he appeared alongside his comedian friend Dom DeLuise in 1974, what started as a standard interview devolved into one of the most chaotic scenes ever broadcast on late-night television. The trouble began when DeLuise brought a can of whipped cream, ostensibly to demonstrate a cooking technique. But mischief was clearly on the menu from the beginning, as DeLuise winked conspiratorially at Reynolds while explaining his culinary expertise to Carson. "I have a feeling this isn't going to be about cooking," Carson remarked with the prescience of a man who had hosted thousands of celebrities. Without warning, DeLuise began spraying whipped cream at Reynolds, who responded by grabbing a pitcher of water from Carson's desk and emptying its entire contents down DeLuise's pants. The audience erupted in shocked laughter as the two friends engaged in what quickly became an all-out food fight. Carson, initially amused by the hijinks, became visibly alarmed when the battle spilled literally onto him. Reynolds, caught up in the moment, grabbed the whipped cream can and turned it on the host, spraying a line directly across Carson's immaculate suit. "That's a $500 suit," Carson exclaimed, a rare moment of genuine irritation breaking through his professional demeanor. By the time the segment ended, the famous Tonight Show carpet was soaked. Carson's desk was dripping with cream, and the host's expensive suit was ruined beyond salvation. Even worse, Carson had 3 more guests scheduled that evening, all of whom would now have to navigate a sticky, wet set. During the commercial break, Carson was heard muttering to his producer, "This is why I should never book friends. They think they can get away with murder." The cleanup was so extensive that the next segment was delayed, forcing NBC to extend the commercial break, a rare disruption to the show's precisely timed format. When cameras returned, Carson had changed his suit jacket, but visible stains remained on the carpet and furniture throughout the rest of the show. What made this incident particularly unique was that it represented one of the few times Carson temporarily lost control of his own show. Unlike most unhinged guest moments involving a single, unpredictable celebrity, this was a coordinated assault on the show's decorum. Reynolds sent Carson a piece offering the next day a new suit to replace the ruined one. DeLuise reportedly sent a case of industrial-strength carpet cleaner to the studio. Despite the mayhem they caused, both comedians were invited back numerous times, though notably never again together. As Carson later quipped when an audience member requested a reunion, "I can't afford the cleaning bills." Hungarian-born actress and socialite Zsa Zsa Gabor made over 100 appearances on The Tonight Show, reliably delivering old-school Hollywood glamour and outrageous anecdotes. But even Johnny was left speechless during a notorious 1979 appearance when Gabor decided to share not just stories, but actual evidence of her colorful romantic history. The segment began typically enough, with Gabor entering in a cloud of perfume and furs, calling Carson darling in her trademark Hungarian accent. About 5 minutes into the interview, Carson innocently asked about her recent vacation to the French Riviera. Gabor suddenly reached into her purse and triumphantly pulled out a skimpy gold bikini. "This, Johnny darling, is what I was wearing when I met my 4th husband on the beach at Cannes," she announced to the visibly startled Carson. "Or was it my 5th? No matter." The audience erupted in surprised laughter as Gabor held up the barely there swimwear for the cameras. Carson, reaching for his water glass, managed a weep. "That's certainly compact." But Gabor was just warming up. Still holding the bikini, she launched into a detailed account of the sexual escapade that followed her beach encounter, describing how her future husband had been unable to resist her in this particular swimsuit. "The minute he saw me in this, Johnny, he followed me to my hotel and knocked on my door. And let me tell you, darling, he did not come to borrow sugar," Gabor declared with a suggestive flutter of her eyelashes. As the audience howled, Carson attempted to steer the conversation back to safer territory, but Gabor was unstoppable. She proceeded to name several famous men who had supposedly also appreciated her in the gold bikini, including some who were very much married at the time. The network censor was having a coronary in the booth, remembered Tonight Show associate producer Michael Sloan. "We had no delay button back then. Whatever Zsa Zsa said went straight to millions of American homes." Carson found himself in the unusual position of trying to rein in a guest. "Zsa Zsa, I think some of these gentlemen might prefer these stories remain private," he suggested gently. Gabor swatted away his concern with a bejeweled hand. "Privacy is for ugly people, darling. When you look like Zsa Zsa, you want the world to know." The incident became even more surreal when Gabor insisted Carson hold the bikini top against his chest, creating an image that would be replayed in Tonight Show highlight reels for decades. Carson, trapped between maintaining his dignity and keeping keeping the segment entertaining, reluctantly complied, his expression a complex mixture of amusement and mortification. What made Gabber such a uniquely unhinged guest was her complete immunity to embarrassment or social boundaries. She didn't care about filters or formats. Zaza operated entirely on her own frequency. Johnny could usually guide a conversation wherever he wanted it to go, but with her, he was just along for the ride. By the time the segment ended, Carson's usual cool demeanor had been replaced by the slightly dazed expression of a man who had survived a hurricane. As the show cut to commercial, he was seen carefully handing the gold bikini back to Gabber, using just his thumb and forefinger, as though even touching it might implicate him in her scandalous tailies. The following day, Carson reportedly received several angry phone calls from famous men mentioned in Gabber's stories. His standard response became, "Gentlemen, I'm just the host. I have as much control over Zaza Gabber as I do over natural disasters." Comedian Red Fox was riding high as the star of the hit sitcom Sanford and Son when he appeared on The Tonight Show in 1975. Known for his raunchy nightclub act and volatile temperament, Fox was considered a booking coup for Carson, who admired the comedian's groundbreaking career. But what should have been a friendly conversation between two entertainment legends instead became one of the most awkward walkouts in television history. The trouble began before Fox even made it to the famous Tonight Show couch. A chain smoker who was rarely seen without a cigarette, Fox arrived backstage and was informed by a production assistant about NBC's recently implemented no-smoking policy on set. The comedian's reaction was immediate and explosive. "No smoke, no joke," Fox reportedly declared loud enough that Carson, waiting on set, could hear the commotion from behind the curtain. What viewers saw when the program returned was Carson introducing Fox with his typical warm enthusiasm. The comedian walked out, shook Carson's hand perfunctorily, and took his seat. But television audiences immediately sensed something was wrong. Instead of engaging with Carson's first question about his hit show, Fox immediately addressed the smoking issue. "Johnny, they tell me I can't smoke out here. I've been smoking on television for years. What's the problem now?" Carson, caught off guard by having an off-camera dispute brought directly on air, attempted to smooth things over. "Well, you know, Red, it's a new network policy. I don't make the rules around here." But Fox was not to be pacified. "It's about respect, man. I've been in this business 30 years. If Dean Martin can drink on his show, why can't I smoke on yours?" The audience, sensing real tension rather than staged comedy, fell uncomfortably quiet. Carson tried a different approach. "Tell you what, Red, let's talk about your successful series, and maybe after the show, we can both sneak outside for a smoke." It was the wrong strategy. Fox stood up abruptly, straightening his jacket. "No, man, this is wrong. I don't perform where I'm not respected." What followed was one of the most uncomfortable moments in Tonight Show history. With cameras rolling live, Fox turned to Carson and said simply, "Sorry, Johnny. No smoke, no joke." Then, without another word, he walked off the set. The audience gasped. Carson, in a rare moment of being visibly flustered, turned to Eve McMahon with a genuinely shocked expression. "Well, Eve," he said after a moment of stunned silence, "I guess we'll be going to commercial a bit early tonight." Behind the scenes, it was absolute chaos. "We had no backup plan because no one walks out on Johnny Carson," recalled stage manager Joseph Petta. "It just wasn't done." When asked about the incident years later, Carson demonstrated his characteristic grace under pressure. "Sometimes people have strong feelings about their habits, very strong feelings." The incident became a legendary moment in late-night television, one of the few times a guest simply walked out mid-interview. Fox eventually returned to the show, but relations between the comedian and Carson remained cool afterward. As Carson later told a colleague, 30 years in television, and I've learned one thing for sure: never open with a question about smoking. Truman Capote's appearances on The Tonight Show traced the brilliant writer's tragic decline from literary lion to troubled celebrity. In his early visits during the 1960s, following the publication of In Cold Blood, Capote was witty, articulate, and engaging, exactly the kind of guest Carson appreciated. But his 1975 appearance painted a devastatingly different picture. By the mid-1970s, Capote's struggles with alcohol and drugs had become public knowledge. Nevertheless, Carson, who admired the author's literary genius, continued to welcome him as a guest. His November 1975 appearance, however, tested even Carson's legendary interviewing skills. From the moment Capote walked onto the set, it was clear something was seriously wrong. He moved unsteadily, requiring assistance to reach his chair. His speech was noticeably slurred and his gaze wandered unfocused around the studio. Truman appeared not just under the influence, but almost in another dimension entirely, recalled Tonight Show associate producer Michael Blake. The makeup department had done their best, but there was no disguising his condition. Carson began with a simple question about Capote's latest writing projects. What followed was a rambling, nearly incoherent response that lasted several excruciating minutes, during which Capote referenced people who weren't present, events that hadn't happened, and at one point appeared to forget he was on television at all. "I'm working on, the thing with the people, the beautiful people who betrayed me," Capote mumbled, apparently referencing his unfinished novel Answered Prayers. "They're all going to be sorry when I finish telling the truth about their dirty secrets." Carson, realizing the interview was rapidly derailing, attempted to focus Capote with more specific questions, but the writer continued to drift, at one point pulling out a crumpled handkerchief and dabbing at his forehead, leaving a smear of makeup on his temple that remained visible throughout the segment. The audience's reaction shifted from initial amusement to uncomfortable silence, as it became increasingly apparent they were witnessing not entertainment, but a public breakdown. "Johnny was like a man trying to keep a drowning person afloat," observed director Frederick de Cordova later. "He kept throwing out lifelines in the form of easy questions, hoping Capote would grab onto something coherent, but nothing worked." The most disturbing moment came when Carson asked about Capote's friendship with convicted murderer Perry Smith, one of the subjects of In Cold Blood. Capote's demeanor suddenly changed, his eyes welling up with tears as he spoke about Smith in the present tense, apparently forgetting that Smith had been executed a decade earlier. "Perry understands me better than these so-called friends in New York," Capote said, his voice cracking. "He's the only one who doesn't want something from me." Carson, recognizing the interview had moved beyond salvaging, gently signaled to his producer for an early commercial break. As the cameras cut away, Carson was seen leaning toward Capote, placing a steadying hand on his arm with genuine concern. When the show returned from commercial, Capote had been quietly removed from the set, with Carson smoothly transitioning to his next guest, without mentioning the author's abrupt departure. Behind the scenes, the Tonight Show staff had arranged for Capote to be escorted to his hotel, with Carson personally ensuring that someone would stay with the clearly impaired writer. "Johnny was genuinely worried about him," remembered production assistant Thomas Lewis. "He kept saying, 'Make sure he's not alone tonight. Make sure someone's watching out for him.'" The incident was particularly poignant because Carson recognized Capote's appearance not as fodder for gossip, but as a troubling sign of a brilliant mind in decline. He never mocked the interview afterward or included it in any retrospectives of the show. Years later, when asked about difficult guests, Carson would occasionally reference the appearance obliquely. "Sometimes people aren't at their best when they come on the show. When that happens, my job isn't to exploit it, but to get everyone through it with as much grace as possible." When Madonna appeared on The Tonight Show in May 1987, she was at the height of her provocateur phase. Her Who's That Girl tour was about to launch, and her deliberate courting of controversy had already established her as pop culture's reigning boundary pusher. But even Carson seemed unprepared for Madonna's determination to shock his largely middle American audience. From the moment she walked on stage in a black lace outfit that barely met broadcast standards, it was clear Madonna had no intention of delivering a standard talk show appearance. Rather than taking her seat at a respectful distance, she immediately positioned herself unusually close to Carson, invading his carefully maintained personal space. "Johnny was famous for controlling the physical dynamics of interviews," explained longtime Tonight Show director Frederick de Cordova. Madonna completely ignored these unwritten rules. The interview quickly escalated from merely flirtatious to overtly sexual. When Carson asked about her upcoming film, Who's That Girl?, Madonna responded with a surprisingly explicit description of a scene that had been cut for being too risque. "They wouldn't let me do the really fun stuff," Madonna pouted, leaning even closer to Carson. the scene where my character teaches the uptight businessman how to really enjoy himself. The studio said it was too hot for theaters. Carson attempted to maintain control. So this film is a comedy then. Madonna's response left the host momentarily speechless. Johnny, I can show you exactly what got cut if you want to come back to my hotel later. I'm very hands-on with my character development. The audience reaction was immediate, a mixture of shocked gasps and titillated laughter. Carson tugged at his tie in his characteristic gesture of discomfort. Madonna knew exactly what she was doing, recalled Tonight Show writer Raymond Smith. She wasn't just flirting, she was deliberately trying to make him uncomfortable on his own show. It was a power play. The situation escalated when Carson made a mild joke about her material girl persona, and Madonna responded with a comment so explicit that the network censor activated the 5-second delay button, resulting in a brief silence that alerted viewers that something inappropriate had been said. The booth was in absolute panic, remembered audio engineer Thomas Wilson. The censor had to hit the button 3 more times during that single interview. Carson attempted to reassert his authority with humor. I'm starting to think I should have booked Mother Teresa instead of the material girl tonight. Madonna, undeterred, responded by placing her hand on Carson's knee, a gesture that crossed one of television's unspoken boundaries. You can handle me, Johnny, she said in a stage whisper. I promise I won't bite unless you want me to. The camera caught Carson's expression transforming from professional amusement to genuine discomfort. Ed McMahon, sensing his longtime colleague's unease, interjected with a hearty laugh and a deflecting comment, providing Carson a moment to recalibrate. The executive producer was shouting for us to prepare to cut to commercial if things got any more explicit, revealed Assistant Director James Peterson. That kind of emergency measure had only been discussed, never actually implemented. Carson managed to gradually steer the conversation toward Madonna's music career for the remainder of the segment, but the tension never fully dissipated. When the interview finally ended, Carson's relief was palpable. As he thanked Madonna and the show cut to commercial, cameras caught him wiping his brow in an uncharacteristic display of stress. In the aftermath, network executives reportedly requested that Madonna not be booked again during Carson's tenure. While never publicly commenting on the appearance, Carson was overheard telling a producer, "Next time, let's stick with guests who understand the difference between the Tonight Show and an Amsterdam red light district." Don Rickles and Johnny Carson shared one of late-night television's most entertaining friendships, with Rickles' mock insult comedy style and Carson's reactions, creating reliable comedy gold. But in 1976, Rickles took their relationship to unprecedented territory by literally hijacking The Tonight Show in the middle of someone else's interview. Carson was mid-conversation with actor Robert Blake when commotion erupted from backstage. Without warning or introduction, Don Rickles suddenly burst through the curtains, completely uninvited and unscheduled. Johnny, I was just next door doing the Dinah Shore show, and I heard you were saying terrible things about me," Rickles bellowed as he charged onto the set, still wearing makeup from his appearance on the neighboring program. Carson's face registered genuine shock. This wasn't a planned bit. "Ladies and gentlemen, apparently Don Rickles has escaped from his handlers," Carson ad-libbed. "Bob, I apologize for this interruption. Don usually has a restraining order preventing him from coming within 500 feet of a television camera, but Rickles was just warming up. Instead of making a brief comedic appearance and leaving, he pulled up a chair, physically inserting himself into the ongoing interview with Blake. Don't mind me, Bobby. I'm just here to make sure Johnny doesn't bore America to death, Rickles announced. You keep talking about your silly little cop show. I'll just sit here and make sure the audience stays awake. What followed was 20 minutes of unscripted chaos as Rickles completely dominated the conversation. At one point, he grabbed Carson's famous coffee mug and peered inside. What is this, Johnny? Water. You cheap bastard. The biggest star in television, and you can't even spring for real coffee for your guests. Rickles then proceeded to walk around Carson's desk territory that was traditionally off-limits to guests and began rifling through the host's drawers on live television. These are private, Carson protested, half-seriously attempting to close a drawer as Rickles pulled out personal items. Private on television. Nothing's private. Look at this, folks, Rickles exclaimed, holding up a comb and small mirror. The great Johnny Carson is as vain as a peacock. In a move that left the crew horrified, Rickles began touching various props and set pieces, at one point actually breaking the rabbit ears on a decorative television that sat on a shelf behind Carson's desk. That's coming out of your paycheck, Carson warned. Bill it to NBC, Rickles shot back. "They can afford it. Look at this cheap set. You're the biggest star in television, and they give you furniture from the Salvation Army." The producers were losing their minds in the control booth, recalled camera operator Mitchell Stevens. This wasn't just a guest going off script. This was a complete takeover of the show. Carson, recognizing that fighting the situation would only make for awkward television, made the professional decision to surrender temporarily to the chaos. He leaned back in his chair, lit a cigarette, and let Rickles run wild. After nearly 20 minutes, Carson finally managed to steer the segment to a commercial break. When cameras returned, Rickles had been persuaded to leave, though not before extracting a promise from Carson to visit his upcoming Las Vegas show. The incident became one of the most talked about moments in Tonight Show history. Viewers called NBC the next day not to complain, but to praise the unscripted hilarity. Carson referenced the invasion in his monologue the following evening. "We've increased security around the studio tonight. Don Rickles has been added to the FBI's most wanted list." The appearance cemented the Carson-Rickles relationship as one of television's great comedic partnerships and demonstrated why live television in that era possessed an electricity that many feel is missing from today's more tightly controlled talk show environment. Two-time Academy Award winner Shelley Winters was known throughout Hollywood for her volcanic temper and unfiltered opinions long before she appeared on The Tonight Show in 1975. But even by her standards, what transpired during her segment with fellow guest Truman Capote created one of the most uncomfortable confrontations in talk show history. Carson had first interviewed Capote, who was promoting his controversial unfinished novel Answered Prayers. When Winters joined the conversation, Carson attempted a light-hearted transition, asking if she had read Capote's work. What he couldn't have anticipated was that Winters had not only read it, but had recognized herself in one of Capote's thinly disguised characters, a portrayal she found deeply unflattering. "I've read enough to know slander when I see it," Winters responded, her voice immediately rising. "Some people think they can hide behind so-called fiction to say cruel things about real people." Capote, either not realizing Winters was referring to his work or choosing to play naive, smiled placidly. "Well, darling, fiction is always better than truth, isn't it? More entertaining, at least." This seemingly innocent response triggered an explosion that left Carson, Capote, and the audience in stunned silence. Winters turned fully toward Capote, her face flushing red with anger. "How dare you?" she shouted loud enough that audio equipment peaked. "You come into people's homes, you eat their food, you act like a friend, and then you go write terrible lies about them. You're nothing but a vicious little parasite." Carson attempted to intervene. "Shelley, I don't think," but Winters was unstoppable. She continued her tirade, ignoring Carson completely. "You think you're so clever with your little stories and your little hints, but everyone knows exactly who you're talking about. You betrayed people who treated you like family." The studio audience grew uncomfortably quiet as it became clear they were witnessing an authentic confrontation. Carson displayed what longtime crew members described as his emergency calm, the composed demeanor he adopted during genuinely difficult situations. When Capote finally spoke, his response only inflamed the situation. "Darling, if you're upset about a character in my little stories, the similarity says more about you than about my writing." What followed was what Tonight Show writer Raymond Smith later described as the closest thing to an on-air assault I've ever witnessed. Winters launched into a personal attack on Capote that went beyond his writing to include brutal comments about his physical appearance, his voice, and his lifestyle. Carson, recognizing the segment had moved beyond salvaging, made the rare decision to cut to an unscheduled commercial break. Before cameras cut away, viewers could see him physically positioning himself between his two guests, literally inserting himself into what had become a dangerously heated confrontation. During the break, producers frantically rearranged the seating, moving Winters to Carson's desk and positioning Capote at the far end of the couch to create maximum distance between the warring guests. When the broadcast resumed, Carson addressed the situation with characteristic understated humor. "We're back, and I want to assure our viewers at home that no authors or actresses were harmed in the making of this show." Yet, for the remainder of the segment, Carson demonstrated why he was considered the master of the talk show format, carefully directing questions to each guest individually and smoothly interrupting whenever Winters showed signs of launching another attack. When the segment finally ended, Carson's relief was palpable. "We'll be right back after this," he told viewers, adding under his breath but still audible, "If I'm lucky, with completely different guests." guests. The Winters Capote confrontation became legendary in Tonight Show history, an example of how quickly the controlled environment of television could descend into chaos. It also demonstrated why Carson was considered the gold standard for talk show hosts. His ability to navigate even the most explosive situations without losing his composure or control of his program. These moments reveal something profound about both television and human nature. They show us Johnny Carson at his most vulnerable and most masterful, a man whose greatest skill wasn't just making people laugh, but maintaining dignity and control when everything around him was falling apart. In today's world of carefully scripted appearances and publicist-managed interviews, we've lost something essential: the electricity of live television, the possibility that anything could happen at any moment. These unhinged guests didn't just challenge Carson, they created television history by reminding us that behind all the polish and professionalism, real human chaos was always just one unguarded moment away. Carson's genius wasn't that he prevented these moments, it was that he survived them with grace, humor, and his reputation intact. He understood that sometimes the best television happens when you lose control, and the mark of a true professional is how you handle the chaos when it inevitably arrives. That's the real lesson from Johnny Carson's most unhinged guests. Not that chaos should be avoided, but that with enough skill, experience, and grace under pressure, even the wildest moments can become the stuff of television legend.